Knuckle up, sheeple, because The Matrix Resurrections just came out at 3 AM, which means I've been up since 3 AM, working on this video so I can quickly talk about the ending of the sequel to the original trilogy of The Matrix. And also, I wanted to add some clarity to some questions some of you may have. But before we enter The Matrix, there will be spoilers. Also, did anyone else notice that the plaque on Bugs' ship was the same kind of plaque that was seen on the Nebuchadnezzar? The Matrix Resurrections takes place 60 years after Neo and Trinity flew into the Machine City to make a deal with the Sentinels. The deal being that if Neo took care of the virus that was Agent Smith, then there would be a peace agreement between Zion and the robots. After Smith was supposedly destroyed, the machines ended up honoring this agreement, as the Oracle and the Architect agreed that the humans who want to leave the Matrix will have the opportunity to. Except Neo, Trinity, and the rest of the free world ended up facing a darker future. Like, darker than the one they were already in, which is saying a lot. And at one point during Neo's absence, the power plants were unable to produce enough energy. Zion fell, as it was unable to sustain itself after the power failures caused a scarcity of resources, causing the machines to try to find a solution to this energy crisis. That solution basically wanting to put more humans into the pods. With some machines violating the treaty made with Neo, the Sentinels are currently at war with each other. After the events and revolutions, Neo and Trinity were reconstructed and put into the Anomalium. So Neo is no longer blind, and Trinity is no longer dead, which is pretty great. The resurrection pods were originally designed by Sati's father. The Anomalium provided the two of them with their own pods to be transferred back into the Matrix, where the Analyst has made them some new realities. Neo works as a world-famous video game designer and was given an altered DSI loop, causing him not to appear as his original self so no one would recognize the legend among the free world. Trinity is given a job at a motorcycle shop and is now a mother. In the Analyst version of the Matrix, the more humans are manipulated and mistreated, the more energy they produce. And it also helps keep 99.9% of people in their pods. This is why the Analyst didn't fully separate Neo and Trinity. He had to keep the two of them just close enough so they could be hopeful and miserable in order to generate a lot of power and essentially stabilize the Matrix. Because when the two of them are together, they create an unfathomable amount of power. This is how the Analysts solved the energy crisis. After the first Matrix film, Agent Smith and Neo formed a connection. What exactly caused this connection is still up for debate, but Smith claims that maybe some part of Neo imprinted onto him during their time killing each other. So because of the code that Neo and Smith share, Smith is given a similar setup as Neo and Trinity. This new setup causes them to think that any memory from the past 3 films is just something in their imagination related to the games. Keeping Smith on this path is definitely something that helps keep the Matrix afloat. And since he's kind of chained with Neo in this new Matrix, he wanted to kill Neo to free himself, but then realized once Neo detached from the Matrix, it destabilized the entire system. So Smith became as free as ever before. When we begin this story with the blue-pilled Neo, the color palette is made up of blues. Some examples of this being that the Analyst has blue glasses, then we see blue pills on top of blue pills on top of blue pills, blue walls, blue sheets, blue sky, blue tint from the devices, so much blue. However, my one critique I did have about this continuation is how in the first 3 Matrix films, there's this subtle green tint when the characters are in the Matrix. But that's somehow missing from this film. Instead, we see like splices of code here and there. You know what? Something that I also miss is the late 90s, early 2000s electronic music playing during the action scenes. I feel like these two things are kind of molded in the Matrix aesthetic. Basically what I'm saying is I want more consistency rather than nostalgia. Anyway, enough about my criticism. The Analyst takes the truth of Neo's story and blends it with a fictional video game to keep Neo from ever realizing that he was brought back into the Matrix. Being a video game designer is a fitting job for him as well, knowing that before he was pulled out of the Matrix for the first time, he was working some boring computer job and was also a skilled hacker in his free time. So from his memory that's disguised as his imagination, Neo coded a new Morpheus. Neo wrote New Morpheus as an algorithmic reflection of 2 forces that helped Mr. Anderson become Neo. Those 2 forces being the original Morpheus and Agent Smith. So New Morpheus is his own program, not just a blatant copy of the now deceased Morpheus. Coding New Morpheus was something Neo could easily do, since he used to have the ability to read and interpret the code surrounding him in the Matrix. And his line, "I still know Kung Fu," is implying that he never really lost his abilities or powers, they were just suppressed by the system. This blend of Morpheus and Agent Smith explains why Morpheus was originally coded as an agent. The modal that Bugs hacks into at the beginning of the film is a loop that was evolving New Morpheus to become aware and try to break free. What initially set him free was New Morpheus entering the key shop where he discovered the programmer access, aka the back doors we've seen in Reloaded and Revolutions. Bugs most likely entered this modal through these back doors. The modal was left open so someone like Bugs could set Morpheus free. After entering the modal, Bugs is able to get Morpheus out of the game and into the Matrix so he can operate like any other sentient program. When in the construct, Morpheus explains to Neo that his mind is hooked onto what the machines have been feeding him for the past few decades. So throughout the film, Neo is experiencing major withdrawal and is having to recover from it, explaining why he is slowly gaining back his powers and why he is currently lacking the ability to fly. Even though modals are a thing, I feel like the progression of the series is further disproving the whole matrix within a matrix within a matrix within a matrix within a matrix theory. A theory that was initially thought of when the architect explained that there were 5 iterations of the Matrix before Neo's meeting with him in Reloaded. All 5 Neos before this one supposedly failed, and the Matrix was reset every time. After his meeting with the architect, Neo suddenly had the ability to separate his mind from his body without jacking in, and was capable of stopping sentinels in the real world the same way that he could stop bullets in the Matrix. Also, after being blinded, Neo could see the world around him have this orange glow, similar to the green code he saw within the Matrix. But this wasn't caused because the real world was a Matrix. This is because the power of the One extends beyond the Matrix. It reaches all the way back to where it came from, which is the source, also known as the machine mainframe, meaning that after his meeting with the architect, Neo could feel this connection to the source. This connection allowed him to see the machines and control them. This is thought to be possible due to some sort of connection left over after being in the pod, since every human has the connections to jack into the system, and it's almost as if every human raised in a pod is born part machine. By the way, I'm just gonna say it, the way the analyst runs the Matrix is giving us some good social commentary. Let me explain. The Matrix was released on March 31st, 1999. It was still part of the 90s culture, and was coming out around the same time as other movies like Office Space. The 90s was an interesting time period. It was a time when a lot of people were working average 9-to-5 cubicle jobs. The pre-housing crisis era didn't necessarily have an overwhelming issue with the working class with extremely low-paying jobs versus the rich multinational corporations inflating the prices of everything. More people in the 90s had money and stability, so it was more about people's discontent with their work environment becoming so monotonous and unfulfilling. The Matrix was specifically inspired by these desk jobs right here involving employees spending most of their life in front of a computer and desperately needing some more excitement, hence the non-stop action, gunfights, and explosions. But fast forward to 2021, everyone's perception of work and money has changed a bit. The analyst claims that yearning for what you have and dreading losing what you do have is the one thing keeping the 99.9% of people in their place. He created a world, much like our own Western society, where everyone's perception of the world is becoming so limited, as everyone's too preoccupied with making enough money just to get by. As we're being drowned in debt working jobs that pay peanuts that don't match inflation of the housing market or student loans or anything that you need to, be alive. Much like our own system, the analyst matrix pairs desire and fear to keep the pod people as blue as Bugs' hair. Because of the power Neo and Trinity generate, the analyst designed this iteration of the matrix around the need to keep the two of them apart and just close enough at the same time. So when they are together within the matrix, they can become as powerful as the analyst or the original architect, as Trinity and Neo are now able to manipulate everything around them. Trinity beating up the analyst at the end and then snapping her fingers to put him back together is a prime example of her newfound abilities. And it tells us just how powerful she's become, as she is exactly like Neo at the end of the first film, because right before she could fly, she saw the Matrix the same way Neo did before he destroyed Agent Smith. The analyst claims that the sheeple aren't going to change, and will remain in the Matrix because they don't want freedom or empowerment. At the end of the first film, Neo makes a phone call to the system, saying that he's going to show the pod people what the system doesn't want them to see, showing them a world without rules or controls, a world where anything is possible. This ending shot with Neo and Trinity flying away is clearly done to match this shot from the end of the Matrix where Neo flies away after making that phone call. The same Rage Against the Machine song, Wake Up, blasts in our ears both times, indicating that both Trinity and Neo have a second chance to wake up the blue-pilled 99.9% of the population within the Matrix. And this time, it's not just going to be people and programs versus the machines. It's going to be people, programs, and machines versus the machines. The analyst's philosophy of people not wanting freedom is proven wrong throughout the film. Like when Bugs reflects on seeing Neo jump from the tower, claiming that watching Neo unlocked her mind. And I just realized that during this scene, Bugs is working as a window cleaner, like the ones outside of Neo's office in the first Matrix film, where the soap on the window kind of looks like the code from the Matrix. Those were my quick thoughts on the ending of the Matrix Resurrections. If you liked this video, or found it somewhat insightful, let me know in the comments, because I could definitely dive more into the Matrix and talk more about any questions you guys might have about this mind-bending world. As always, thanks for watching.